Okay, so the next command we're going to try is Revolve. So we're going to focus on this guy here, Revolve. And Revolve is nice for creating features that have a radial symmetry, right? So start a new page, please, or a new part. And we're going to sketch. So I'd like to make something that looks like a donut first, and then we're going to talk about some other shapes that you can make with this. So go ahead and sketch. I'm going to sketch on the front face. I'm going to start with a circle, and I'm going to make that circle, I'm going to use the axes that are laid down on the front face. This is just good practice, guys. Whenever possible, don't start your part randomly out in space, right? Keep it in line with the original axes on the part. That's going to make things a lot easier for you. So I'm going to go ahead and make, I don't know, maybe like a 1/2 inch diameter circle. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create an axis here that I'm going to spin this circle about, and that'll create a donut shape. And this axis, folks, I want you to, what we're going to do is we're actually going to use a sketch feature here. So if I were to create a line using my line tool and use that as my axis, SolidWorks may get mad at me for having a stray image in a sketch. So one way to get around that is to use sketch lines, which aren't going to count as, SolidWorks won't be thinking that you need to do something with that line. It's purely for sketching purposes. So under line, right, you can create, it's a center line, but really what it is a sketch line. Okay, you can just put that, I just put that right on the y-axis there. And that's all I need at the moment. Well, actually, let me set my distance, right? So I'm going to say that I want the distance from this line to that center to be, let me make it a nice even number. I'm going to make it 0.75. Okay? Actually, let me make it 1. Let me just make it an even 1. Okay? Now I'm going to get out of the sketch, and I'm going to go to Revolved Boss Base. Okay? So the key there is Revolve. Don't worry about the Boss Base thing. I'm going to click on this, and SolidWorks is usually pretty smart, folks. It's usually pretty smart. So what it is doing is it's selecting a contour, right? So this is the contour that's been selected, and it's selecting a line to spin that about. So this is my axis of revolution, right? And it's saying I want to go around 360 degrees, which is the full donut. You can do parts of a donut, right? So I could do 180 degrees, that's what that would look like. I could do 90 degrees, that's what that would look like, right? So you don't have to do the full 360, but let's leave that there. Sometimes note, folks, that if you have exited out of your sketch and selected something in the background, SolidWorks may not automatically detect the axis about which you want to revolve your feature and the feature that you're revolving. So if that happens, just know that you'll have to select these things in your drop-down menu over here. Not a big deal, okay? All right, so let's fool around a little bit now with what happens when we change some of these shapes. Okay, so I can go in and I can edit, again, anything to do with this sketch. So if I want my donut to be a little bit bigger and tighter, maybe actually looking like a donut, I could do a couple different edits, right? So I could work on this, and I could say, well, I want to thicken that out a little bit. That's what that would look like, right? And maybe I want to bring it in a little bit tighter to the origin, right? So that would be this distance here. Let me say I want this to be 0.75 as well. There is going to be a limit, guys. One thing that happens with Revolve is sometimes there are mathematical problems that come up if I condense this down, right, to a single point. So let me show you what that looks like. So sometimes Revolve will cause sort of catastrophic errors in SolidWorks, and SolidWorks won't be able to actually execute the command that you want it to execute. This is a nice looking like inner tube or Dunkin' Donut, okay? But let me show you what happens if we create a mathematical problem, okay? So you'll come up against this in some of your math classes. I keep ragging on math 243, right? Revolving stuff around stuff. You know, there are mathematical issues that will come up if we push this to its limit. So let me show you. So if I go into Sketch and I say here that I want to do let me push it so that this is spinning about its outer edge, and I'll show you what happens. So what will happen here is that this distance, so let me leave this at 0.75, and let me say that this distance is 0.75 divided by 2, right? So I'm basically rotating about this edge here, and that will cause like a donut with basically no hole, right? Mathematically, this is going to be a problem for SolidWorks. So you get this horrible error, okay? And if I close it, you'll notice that it won't even build what I want it to build. So there are ways to get around this. You may have bumped up against a mathematical error. Some folks did, I think, in their puzzle cubes when they try to have a cube edge touch another cube edge in an extrude. So if that happens, usually the fix winds up being something like this. So if I go back in, I'm going to add an absolutely insignificant 5, 1. Okay, so fourth decimal place, I'm going to add just a hair's breadth of distance there. And what this will do is it'll get rid of that mathematical inconsistency right at that point. So the problem is SolidWorks doesn't know what this is. Is this solid? It's a single point in space, right? And that's not a solid object. That's math. Okay, so if I exit the sketch, it's going to be exactly what I want it to be, right? You can't tell that there's a tiny hole there. That would be the shape I'm looking for, okay? All right, so that's one inconsistency I want to point out. Let's push it to another limit, which is if I continue to work with this sketch, right, and bring this axis of revolution in towards the center here, if I bring it in towards the center, that is going to create a sphere, right? In the limit, as I move my axis in, I'm going to have a sphere. So that you might go, okay, well, that's easy enough. I'm just going to make this 0, right? And go ahead and try to revolve it. This is another mathematical inconsistency for SolidWorks. So what's happening is you're overlapping all sides of that circle. So it actually wants you to create a sphere. It's going to want you to have a semicircle here, a closed shape just on one side that you're revolving 360 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this line for a second. And I'm going to go ahead and draw, to fix this, I'm going to draw a hard line that's going to make a semicircle. I'm going to trim it. You know how I like the trim tool here. I'm going to exit the sketch, and now it should be able to give me a sphere, right? Now I have a sphere. So just watch out for those types of errors when you're revolving. Usually it can be fixed by either creating a shape that is only on one side that you can truly rotate 360 degrees. It doesn't double back on itself. Or doing that trick that I did with the donut with no hole, where you basically you go in and you add a real tiny fragment of it, add to that dimension to make sure there's no math inconsistency. All right, just to show you that we don't have to deal just with circular shapes, I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit this sketch and add a couple of different features to it, just so you can see that how the revolve function works. So I'm going to go ahead and make, I don't know, I'll make a kind of like a cut here. And, again, I like making objects using simple lines. I'm using something called the offset feature here, guys, which is a nice little tool. So let's say I wanted to, I don't know, make a shape that it's kind of like a circle, but it's got a little notch in it, or a sphere with a little notch. I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff that I don't need. If you leave stray items in your sketch, guys, that don't form a closed shape, you're going to get all kinds of gnarly errors in SolidWorks. So really make sure that at the end of the day, your sketches are very clean and you don't have anything stray. So by stray, I would mean stuff like this. See how you barely can see these little problems here, but they will actually cause errors when you try to revolve this shape. So those corners look good. All right. So let me exit this, and there we've got some like Death Star looking thing here, okay? So you can have all kinds of shapes. And again, if I want to go back and make this look like something different, let's say I do 270, that's going to just have a nice chunk out of the side, right? So Revolve is a nice tool. It can cause lots of errors, so just be patient with it and watch out for those mathematical inconsistencies that I highlighted.